Hi, Jen. Jen from
Hi.
Educator Parenting. Thank you for joining us for WOTBaby Conversations. And this is part two of our conversation around toddlers and setting. Today, we're going to talk about setting boundaries and tantrums and how to deal with that. So you're an obstetric social worker and you run parenting classes. So you do early parenting classes with baby or new parents at the Mater Hospital, and you also run through Connected Parenting. You run parenting classes for children of older children up to the age of 6.
Correct.
You work
Yes.
a lot with that parent connection and communicating with your toddlers, which is what I want to talk lots about today. Um, so in terms of boundaries, we were just talking before about setting boundaries, and my question to you was, setting boundaries. When is it the age? When do you go from just setting a routine and being consistent with a routine to actually in your mind going, well, right now I'm setting boundaries? And it was really interesting. You said that just putting up a swaddle or taking a baby into the bedroom to show them that it's sleep time and being consistent with what you do is actually setting a boundary. And I think
Mm.
following through with that and putting your baby down and then guiding them with their sleep. And I guess that's the way that I see it as well.
Because I
My
think a
work.
boundary moment is a take charge moment, and we talked about it in our last chat. But in our parenting, whenever possible, we want to let our kids lead, and we want to kind
Yeah.
of follow their lead and let them explore their world. But some of the time, for our kids, what they need is for their caregivers, so their parents, to take charge. And so when we're in a take charge moment, that might be for a newborn baby. It's knowing, look, despite what you might be showing me, or it looks like you want to do something else, I kind of know that
I
if we don't
know.
get you to bed soon, you'll be overtired. And so it does sort of start, I think, really early. And then, but it's nothing like what it's like in the thick of it, with a little toddler who is kind of on a mission to leap off everything
Yeah.
and touch everything, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and that's when boundaries come really into force, and we need to get really good at it. And it's also when our little toddlers emotions peak. So parents are dealing with, often for the very first time, kids who are seeking out those boundaries but also having really big feelings, and
Yeah.
it's very confusing time.
Little people with big feelings. I say that
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so how would you, like, with boundaries, like setting the boundaries, but then following through? So I guess how do you set a boundary with a toddler that really, I mean, they don't they don't make a lot of sense until they're about 3 or 4,
No.
where you can kind of reason with them a little bit. So when you've got like a 2-year-old that you can't, what seems like you can't reason with them. So how do you set a boundary and how do you deal
Yeah.
with that? Is that dealing with the tantrum, or do you set the boundary and then the tantrum separate? Like what's
Yes, 100%. So first of all, we always want to kind of, where possible, we would still try to avoid a situation like, boundaries are hard for us. So
yeah,
you're still trying to use humor, distraction. If you can, you might sense your child about to push for a boundary, and we can do, like a very young child who's thinking about touch. I said before, that wants to flick on and off the PowerPoint. And many parents will get very caught up in that very first test of boundaries, and they think it's really important. They need to come in with a hard, I said no. And I'm like,
or
you know
like
what?
sitting in the high chair and having a meal when they don't
Yeah.
want to, or
So first of all, we've got to understand what's normal in terms of child development. So we've got to know that a little child is going to have a lot of trouble sitting still for more than 10 minutes is a lot for a child. We know that kids are going to throw things off the high chair and want to explore their world. We know that they're going to want to put not non-food in their mouth. And so we've got to kind of know what's normal and kind of not sweat that, know how to distract, divert, and
yeah.
kind of get around that stuff. Then we've got to know when we're in a boundary moment. And I talk to parents about, how do we know when we're in a boundary moment? For me, it's that moment that we say as a parent, yeah, this isn't working for me. And you know it really clearly, because the boundary is about what I will and won't put up with, really.
Yeah.
So just say, just say we've got a 2-year-old and they want a drink of milk. They want it right now, but you're feeding the baby.
Yes, good
And
one. Yes. Yep.
and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I don't want to say no to my child because I don't want them to feel pushed to the
The
side because
mother
I've got this
guilt.
baby.
Yeah.
There's the guilt.
Yeah.
Maybe I should just struggle along and then kind of do it. And then the baby gets unlatched and the baby's crying. And at the end of the day, if we don't know how to set a boundary,
Yeah.
everybody's missing out, because boundaries are how we juggle 2 kids. Boundaries are how we make our kids feel safe and secure.
Yeah.
And boundaries are how we self-care. So this is how I would do it in that situation. So just say my child is there and they say, I want that drink of milk. And maybe I've tried humor and I've tried distraction. And they're like, nah, no way, sister. There's no currency that's going to work right now. I want what I want and I want it now. And
Yeah.
that makes sense to me. So what I would need to do, I've got 4 steps. First, you need to take a deep breath and regulate yourself, because if you come into a boundary moment and you're like really worked up, for example, if you say, we do not throw food in this family,
Yes.
you may as well set a timer for 37 minutes. They're going to throw food again, because our kids will seek out our connection and they'll take it in any form. And we're never more connected than when we are yelling, actually, unfortunately. So it's not good connection, but they'll take it. So you have to come in like low and calm. The second thing I would
They
do
don't really
is,
understand what you're saying anyway, do they? So you can say, we don't throw food in this house. And they're like, what does that mean?
well, also, if you're yelling, they go into fight or flight. They actually won't process anything. So it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So we've got that. So then we've got our little child in front of us. They really want their glass of milk. The first thing I'm going to do is try to welcome that feeling. So before I set my boundary, I'm going to let them know I hear them, because kids go much better if they feel seen and heard. And you want to do this with passion and like be genuine, like be authentic. Like, oh, I get it. You really want to drink a milk and mummy's feeding the baby. This is so hard. It is so hard being a sister some days. I get it. Okay. So you're pausing there and you're genuinely letting them know, I get it. You would be surprised, even children with limited vocab at 2, in terms of what they're saying. 90% of communication is nonverbal. I've likely done this. I've gone,
Yeah.
yeah, and they're like, oh, you get it.
Yeah.
I just want my milk. And like, my world has changed recently. And so we do that. And then we set the boundary. And this bit, it's so important. We are cool and calm and kind of like, babe, this is no big deal. I got this. And so I would say something like this. First, I'm going to feed the baby. And then I'm going to get you your milk. And then my 4th step is to welcome more feelings. And I'd say, I know it is hard to wait. Come and sit next to me and we can wait together.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that everything will be peachy because your toddler says, wow, you set a boundary in 4 steps. That's amazing. I'll just do exactly what you say now.
No,
but it
never.
makes such a difference.
Yeah.
And what I try to do is have parents feeling really empowered that you do have what it takes within your relationship to just say no, because that's in your interest and the baby's interest. But the bigger picture is it's in your toddler's interest, because what you're saying to your toddler in that moment is, hey, just in case you're worried, I'm still at the wheel. And I know that our world has changed a little bit lately, and you might be testing me a little bit to check, is everything okay? And I've just answered, even if they didn't like the answer, in that they want what they want still, we've really answered a bigger question, which is, hey, mum, have you got this? Because, I need to know you do. If we don't do that, if we get the milk and we get the next thing and the next thing, our child is going, my world's changed a bit lately, and I feel like the same limits that would have been in place are not there. And so I'm going to keep testing and asking. And now I'm going to start hitting you in the face because I need you to tell me that you're at the wheel. And that's where things can really spin out following, particularly the birth of a second baby or a transition for a child. But those same 4 steps apply every single, like I would set those same 4 steps if my 13-year-old wanted TikTok. I would use those same 4 steps in that situation as I'd be using with a 2-year-old.
Same with an 18-year-old?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I would, because it's human. It's like
that's a whole nother level. Trust me.
Anyway, we won't do that. But yes, it is I'm still using the same stuff with my older kids, is what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
The only difference is if there is a safety risk, I cut the first 2 steps. So if you've got a child that's about to hit the baby or throw a big toy or something, then I don't take as much time for me, and I don't name the feelings. I'm just going to set that boundary, like, hey, I won't let you hit. And then I'm like, I know you're having a hard time today. And I know you wanted that toy off Johnny, but I won't let you hit him.
Mm.
Okay. So you're holding and you're really just regulating in that moment.
Yeah, yeah. It's a real juggle with and I know you do a lot of work with adjusting to sibling, to a new sibling.
Yes.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
do the one-on-one with families who are bringing a
I
new
do
baby
one-on-ones,
home.
and I've got an online program, and it's
Okay.
one of the, to be honest, I think it's one of the areas of parenting we don't support parents
Yeah.
enough with.
Yeah.
I think that
Absolutely. Yeah.
we're all quite aware it's a big adjustment into
Mm,
parenthood for the first time,
mm.
but I think, and we think when people are pregnant with a second baby, we go, "Oh, you've got this because you've done it before." But
No,
what they've never done before is juggle the needs of two children simultaneously
you're
that are at different
always,
developmental
yeah.
stages.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you're always a first-time parent. You're a first-time parent of one baby, you're a first-time parent of two babies, you're a first-time parent at this age, a first-time parent at that age. You might have
Yes.
different circumstances going on in your
And
life.
and and additionally, I think for that older child, there is always a period of adjustment because
Always.
it's a massive change
I
to
know.
their, because again, we talked about at the start of this, I think, for their world,
Yeah.
we are it. And so we've just come
It.
in and gone, "Hey, welcome to the new love of my life.
Yeah.
You're going to get on with them just great. They're going to be your best friend.
Yeah.
Just get on as if nothing happened." And they can't do that. It's a really big thing for our
No.
kids.
And I find I get that a lot, parents who've brought the new baby home and they're like, how do I, so they want to guide the baby with settling and guide them into routine, but they're like, how do I, because obviously with a little baby, you've got to go in and help them more and be there and pat and shush and those sorts of things. So it's like, how can I do that with a toddler? I can't do that with a toddler. I'm too busy. And it's like, if you, and I often say, your baby, when they're little, they need feeding and sleeping and lots of cuddles and all of those things. But as they're growing and developing, we need to feed them and love them and cuddle them. But then when they're tired, put them to bed and help them to learn to sleep and help them with that guidance so that you can then have more time with your toddler. So
Mm.
so if you know that you can feed your baby and give them cuddles, and then when it's time, you can swaddle them up, pop them into bed, and they kind of have those foundations for sleep, so they can sort of sleep a little bit more independently. You've got more time with your toddler, so it's actually a good thing to kind of focus on that, as well as, these are really helpful tips with setting boundaries and that connection with your toddler. But I often say, they go, I don't know, I feel so guilty with which one to be with the most because the baby needs more cuddles. But it's like, yeah, actually, your toddler needs you to connect.
Yeah.
You need to connect and take the time and to say to them, I'm going to put your baby brother or sister down, and then I can sit with you and read a story. And then, but actually be able to do that, actually be able to put the baby down and the baby goes to sleep, and then you've got time with your toddler. It's a real juggle.
That is going to make a difference. And what I'd want parents to know who are going through this is that, actually we can really connect with our kids in our toddlers in short amounts of time. So even
Yes.
just
Yeah.
upping the amount of fist pumps and high fives
Yeah.
and cuddles and ruffling their head and trying to show that delight. You might just catch a little moment with your toddler where it's just the two of you and you say, "I love it when it's just the two of us. I love spending time with you." You might just, sometimes it's a moment and it's there and you embrace it and you just let your child know just how much they mean to you and how much you love time with them.
Just a big
Because for,
smile when they walk in the room.
yeah, for our toddlers, it really is that. It's that physical display of delight and it's time, wanting to have time with them. But it doesn't have to be all day and you don't have to take them to the zoo. It can happen just in, at bedtime, you blow 10 kisses and say, "I want to leave you with 10 kisses so that you've got them through the night." And we're just adding these tiny little layers of connection. And then the other thing is knowing that just in 10 minutes, we can make a really big difference. So if you can get that baby to bed and then play with your toddler, because it's actually through play that they feel most connected with us, because that's when they're in flow. And so their brains are sort of open to that connection. And that's when they kind of feel the most loved and the most centered. And just 9 to 10 minutes regulates their brain. So you're going to have often less tantrums and kind of less seeking you out because you've really filled that cup in a very meaningful way. So, just 10 minutes of special time can make a really big difference
Yeah,
too.
absolutely. But it is a real juggle. There's a lady across the road who's just had a new baby and her daughter's 4. And I asked her the other day, how's it going? How's the baby? She goes, oh, the baby's a dream. But the other one, she's like, it's like,
Yeah, it's
oh, it's
really
hard.
hard.
It's a hard
I really
transition.
relate. I found it really hard when I took home a second baby, and I
Yeah.
wasn't really prepared for how hard it would be for my older son
And
and that
you
process.
find the feelings that you have or the experiences that we've been through as adults and through our lifetime. And so I talk a lot about this with when babies are crying and
Mm.
helping mums to sort of get through or to la pause and to sort of look at what's been happening and then listen to the cry rather than just react to it. It's very much crying is a sort of signal that someone's hurting or they're in pain or they've been abandoned or all those
Mm.
feelings that we've felt throughout our life through different experiences. And then when our babies are quiet or our children are behaving, we feel relief and we feel better. So it's quite hard to separate that emotional feeling as a parent. And so when you have two, you've got a toddler and a baby who's crying and a toddler who's at you, and you've got all of this noise in your head, you just want the noise to stop. So you react rather than
Yeah,
sit back and think
yeah,
about it. But it's a real struggle. It's hard work. I remember it very clearly, vividly.
yeah.
When my kids were little. But yeah. So, it's all about showing them what to do, I guess, rather than like we often tell our kids what not to do, like don't do that, don't do this, don't
Mm.
do that. But it's more about telling them what to do and
Yeah,
being and remembering that our children don't have the decisive brain that we have. They can't work out problems. So they need us to guide them. So for
yeah,
telling them what to do and praising them for that a little bit more than telling them what not to do. Um,
yeah,
yeah, I think that helps as well.
yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been
Thank you for
great.
having
I
me.
have so many parents who ask me so many toddler questions, and I just find their development and their little worlds fascinating, but they are hard work. So I'm sure that this episode of What Baby Conversations is going to help.
Awesome.
So
Thank you so much
thank
for
you
having
so
me.
much for your time, Jen.